Hello, welcome everyone to PRT, Paranormal Round Table. I'm your host, Josh Turner, also known as Wolf, and with me is my trusty companion
and friend, Tony.
Well, not really friend, you're my godson. Kind of forced to be.
I thought we were friends, but I guess I was wrong.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, okay, whatever. That means a lot to me now, okay? It opens up a lot of... It makes a lot of sense is what I'm trying to say, all right? I don't know how many times I've seen in the comments about you bullying me, and I never realized it.
Oh, my gosh.
Because I just grew up with it.
What comments about you? Oh, jeez. What comments were people that I was bullying you?
I saw them, okay?
Okay. And
you might have deleted them.
Felt them
okay.
too.
I'm sure you deleted them to get rid of them.
You felt them too. You have synesthesia. They were the color blue.
Exactly.
The comments were red.
They smelled like pain and torture.
That's right? That's what it boils down to. They made a burning sensation in my mouth for reading them.
Exactly.
Guys, okay. So anyways, enough of that. I hope everybody's making it okay. But the email address is daswolfman88@gmail.com. daswolfman88@gmail.com. Send us your strange and unusual weird stories, which we've gotten a lot of lately.
Yeah. I was going to say, we also have a website, prtpodcast.com, prtpodcast.com. We have a lot of cool stuff on there, our merch store. We have a nice little art section. You know, if you have some beautiful art you want to send to us, you can just submit it there, and then you could have everyone see it.
Yep.
We have our episodes on there, you know, like I said, our merch store, our PayPal.
We got really cool sweatshirts and t-shirts. We got all of ours in.
Yeah.
And they look really cool. I like the way Printful did a good job. Actually, we might be expanding the store at a later time, include more different types of merchandise.
Some new designs, stuff like that.
Yeah. A friend of mine has another really big talk show, a lot bigger than mine. Mine's a little bitty thing compared to his. His is literally 10 times the size of mine. But yeah, he has kind of turned me on to some ideas or whatever. Has been helping me out along the way. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we also, if you're on YouTube and you want to find all that stuff, we have it in our description. It's all the links are down there. From in every episode, we always keep everything that we need on our links right down in the description, right down there. So please check it out if you want to find it easy.
So I guess what we're going to talk about today, we hadn't really decided. So I'm just going to let it flow. There is a topic that keeps coming up that we've been getting a lot of, and me and Tony discussed it before the show. What is that topic, Tony?
Rakes.
Yes, and rakes are very important because, like, if you need to get rid of the leaves in your yard, or if you need to cut, what are you shaking your head for?
Well, I was just thinking, I don't know how many times those dastardly leaves attacked me in the yard. And if I didn't have my trusty
rakes. You defended yourself off with the rake. Rakes are very important, folks. So that's sort of a public service announcement that we're going to do before the show gets started. So anyways, I'm just kidding. That was a corny joke. Look, the thing about the rake, we're just going to jump right into it because there's so much to talk about. I did a show on Dogman Encounters a while back. I think it was episode 247, 248, one of them two. We talked about the rake and some of the first time I'd heard about this, it was a while back. It was some friends of mine that had gone hunting on some land that one of my cousins owned. And they came back with the crazy story. Now, the guy's stepbrother had gone out there the year before. I believe it was like the year before, and he had an encounter with some dogmen. Well, his brother didn't really believe it. He didn't believe that there were dogmen. He laughed at him. He made fun of him even when I vouched for him and said, look, these things are real. I have seen one myself. Well, I don't know what they are, but they're real. He just kind of thought it was a joke. And I guess when I was a young kid, before I turned 15 and saw what I saw, I thought that was a joke too, man. I just thought, okay, a cadejo, a hombre lobo, whatever, wolfman. I don't believe in that. Or if I would have believed in it, I would have been running around at midnight on Halloween.
Yeah, yeah. Anyone who does believe in it, you get a common occurrence of like people who do encounter it, they just stop doing whatever they were doing before, which is running in the woods or hunting, and so once you see one of these things, it definitely does change your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And so anyway, what happened was for those of you who didn't hear that show, the guy's brother went out there the following year during deer season. he asked me for a hookup, and I said, yeah, my cousin's got a place out there. You can go hunt. And so, he lets people go out there and use the land. He usually has people that'll come out there. They'll pay him to go out there and hunt. It's really good whitetail hunting. But I vouch for them, so he just let them go for free because he's my cousin. What ended up happening was a pretty crazy series of events. Him and another friend of mine, they worked for me at the time. They were bouncers at my club. This was years ago. What is this, 2020? This was probably like 2003. So I'd say like
17
years ago. In fact, I know it was 2003. So they went out there and they ran into this creature. Now, what ended up happening with this creature, it climbed up a tree. The one friend of mine saw it climbing up the tree, and he stared at it for a minute, and it stopped moving, so he thought, oh, I must be seeing things. But it was like a translucent, like pinkish color. Then it became like more white, if I remember what he had told me. Or it was white, then it became like translucent and pink. I think that's what it was. It started off like he saw it because it looked white, and it was climbing up the tree. And then it became like kind of pinkish, translucent color, and it was wrapped around the tree. Have you ever seen like a flying squirrel? That's the way he described it to me, and he actually tried to draw it for me on a napkin. He's not a bad artist. I don't have the napkin anymore. I had somebody the other day asking me to redraw the leprechaun that the little girl had drawn, and I'm telling you right now, I believe she was between 6 to 8 years old at the time. I can't remember exactly, but I'm pretty sure she was a better artist than me. So my hands have all been busted up. My fingers, I haven't broken a lot of bones, but I have in my hands and my fingers in particular been popped a few times because I boxed for years. When you fight people and you hit 250 to 300 pound guys on the head for a living for a while, you're going to break some fingers. You're going to mess some stuff up. Some of these fingers are all mangled and they never even got looked at. I just let them heal so they're all crooked. But I can tell you right now, I'm not a good artist. Now, when I was younger, I could draw pretty good. My little nephew Christian, he's a great artist, and Tony, you're a great artist.
I'm all right, but
you're pretty good, but not on my level. As far as like my level is like pre-K, and I'm talking like pre-K where they just take the crayon, scribble up and down. Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm worse than that. I can't even scribble, but I just kind of laughed and I was like, I can't redraw this, And folks, I don't have the napkin to show you what this thing looked like, but I can tell you they gave me a very vivid description of it. Now, later, as they got a little drunker, because they came back to the bar and they started drinking because their nerves were shot. I could tell when they first got there, they were sober. They came in straight from the field, got to the bar about 11 o'clock, and both of them were pretty... They were eager to tell me what had just happened, and it vindicated his stepbrother who had told him that there was some weird stuff on that land. I remember being out there as a young man and being told of these Sasquatch-looking creatures, of these dog-headed-looking creatures. That there again, I just kind of briefly heard about that, and I thought it was just like more of these urban legends. Like when I was growing up in Taylor, it was like, oh, these dog heads, whatever. I never really I paid attention to it. I ran around in the woods. I hunted and fished until I was, like I said, 15. And, I never really it wasn't even an issue for me. I never thought that this was something that was real, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, because you never saw it. I mean, seeing is believing. That is a major, really, prominent saying is, you can hear someone tell you all the time how the sun goes around the moon, or how the earth is a square, but unless you see it yourself, you're not going to believe it,
The earth is square?
No, just those are examples. Like
examples? Okay. Anyway.
Just some obviously not true, but if someone kept telling you that, you're not going to
believe it. So
unless you saw it yourself.
So here's what I'm going to tell you. This creature that was on the tree, the way they described it was the one friend of mine, he saw it first. He told the other friend, he's like, what is that? I mean, like, do you see that? Well, the second friend looked, and this thing had started to kind of blend in with its surroundings. And so it became more of a translucent with just some pink in the middle of it. Now, the other friend had some binoculars, and he looked through them, and he saw this like pink looking material within this translucent body. They both gave the same description. It was wrapped around the tree. It wasn't a real big tree. It was spread out about 2 feet. It wasn't a humongous tree or anything, but it was like it was hiding. And then it turned its head around at a 360, and they saw the face of it through the binoculars, and it crawled around to the other side of the tree. Then it got down out of the tree and started crawling on all fours, like it flipped its body around, jumped off of the tree, and it was like inverted.
Mm-hmm.
That is a weird story. That was given to me and to 3 other guys that from the old days. They told us all that story, and we were just kind of floored, like, wow, that's crazy. But, so many weird things had already happened up to that point. It wasn't like we were just shocked, but I had never heard of anything like that. I do have a friend who's now deceased. He gave me a crazy story that was given to him. Now, he gave me this story years ago, like in the mid-90s. So I guess that would technically be the first time that I heard this story, but I didn't really put 2 and 2 together until I began to get like threads. You know what I mean? Like I said, I'll get a thread, and then it'll be like 2 or 3 encounters or stories of the same thing. You're just constantly hearing about it. You're going like, okay, I never believed vampires existed. I still don't know really if that's what they are, but Tony knows, we have gotten stories of creatures that sound like vampires.
I mean, it's the closest description,
The closest description we can come up with.
We can come up with ourselves is like, oh, that just, makes sense to us. Is like, oh, if we had to put a name to it, that would be it.
It would be a vampire.
Yeah.
Nobody has come forward and ever told me, I saw a vampire. I mean, nobody's ever gotten in touch with me and said, I saw a vampire. Now, I guess I'm wrong. Since the episode about vampires aired, people have given me stories and said, maybe this was a vampire. So I guess I'm wrong in that way. I guess they said, do you think this is a vampire? But nobody has really come by me and said, I definitively saw a vampire. It bit me and tried to drink my blood. No, they have tried to attack people, but these people obviously were not. They were successful in getting away. That's why they had the story to tell. And a couple people who have come forward with those kind of stories, that they've actually had someone else to verify it. Like one lady had her husband get in touch with me a couple days later, or he just did anyway. And he said, look, my wife's not a liar, and he was kind of concerned that I was going to tell the story and kind of make fun of it or something. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I wouldn't tell the story, and if I thought she was, full of, whatever. But I honestly have not gotten anybody who's told me anything too fantastical when it comes to those creatures. Now, when it comes to the Rake, I've got some pretty weird stories.
It's a pretty weird creature.
Pretty weird creature, yeah. And somebody was telling me the other day that it was born of a creepypasta, whatever. So there's this is a very vast subject. That's why I didn't want to waste much time getting right into it. I don't know what that is, if it could be a tulpa. If you guys at home know what that is, a tulpa is something that is created as a thought form. And I will explain that a little bit too.
I mean, we discussed here a little bit, maybe what if they were just naming it, like misidentifying it. And we thought maybe like, oh, what if it was a Wendigo?
A Wendigo. Now that is another thing. I don't watch a lot of paranormal type stuff or listen to paranormal. I don't really have time. I work a lot, I run my business and everything. But I did watch at the request of a friend of mine that runs a group or whatever. He told me, check out this show. And I got on there and it was about Wendigos. And I watched it with Nellie, my wife. And Tony, you should check it out too. It's pretty good. It was on on demand or whatever.
Yeah, just send it to me.
You can get on there on Roku, whatever. And it was pretty crazy. I can't remember the name of the show, folks, right off the top of my head, because I don't follow any one show in particular because I just watch random stuff. But one of the encounters of this Wendigo was like Rake-like. It was like a white creature. It didn't have antlers or horns. Now, I am going to talk about Wendigo eventually because we have got a few reports of that, enough to probably scrape a show together. But there again, I'm kind of torn when I look at my files. I'm like, this is a Wendigo, this is a Rake, this is a Skinwalker. Okay, I don't know if they're all the same because I'm not an expert. Who am I kidding? Yeah, I'm an expert, folks. I'm just going to be real honest with you. I am an expert in all of this, and I know all about all of the conspiracies
Wow, this is news to me.
I do. I actually do.
I didn't know this.
I know what a dogman is. I know what a ghost is. I know what UFOs and Bigfoot are. I know what all of this is.
Jeez.
I'm just going to lay it out there, dude. I'm a very smart guy, and I've pieced it all together. It took me about 2 days to discern all that.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, which is long for me with my big brain. I'm a very intelligent man and very humble.
Whoa, you're not going to believe it. I just figured it out too. And that little time span.
You know what, Tony? That's because you spending time with me, it's rubbed off on
when you said that, I wasn't, but then I was like, I'm going to learn under this dude. And 10 seconds later, expert. That's how that works.
That's right. It's very, you know what? That's very, see, Anthony, he has never really learned like Tony just learned it through 10 seconds of meditation and silence. Anthony has never been able to do that. That's why he's not on the show talking.
Well, first off, you have
he
to
uses logic and all this other crap.
Yeah, there's no need for that here. But first, if you want to learn Anthony, first thing you got to do is just find and make a post, and just in that post say, as an expert.
As an expert.
Immediately you will
be an expert. So, yeah, and in a later show, once I get really big, then I will tell you about what every one of these things are. Until then, I'm going to keep those secrets close to my chest. So that's how that's going to be. I do wonder if these things are all the same. Like I said, I wonder if they're all the same. I do already know the answer to that, like I said, but just for sake of the show, I'm going to wonder. But in all seriousness, I think that they could be all of the same, from the same category. There is a huge gulf developing in this whole cryptid community about whether these things are supernatural, whether they're physical. I'm going to tell you right now, I think 90% of it, I used to say maybe 70, 75% of it was of some sort of ethereal nature, but I think 90% of this stuff is something that either comes in and out of our reality and that manifests itself as a physical creature, or it's all just, some sort of spiritual being that manifests itself, physical. I don't know. I don't know if these things are coming through portals or what. Most cryptozoologists that I talk to, and I talk to a lot of them, they really, really scoff at the idea that Dogman is a physical being. And there are a lot of people who don't like that. They get very, very agitated. I get more people from the physical side of it that get really, really ticked off just because what they saw looked physical. Now, by that logic, I would say that they were all physical too, because the one I saw looked physical. But one thing I learned from living in a house that was full of, I would just preface it like with it was demonic.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it. A lot of
the stuff that was going on in my house was ghost, demonic. I'll just be honest. It was demonic. I mean, there was like a lot of, these things can manifest in the physical way. They can do things. They throw things off the walls. They can physically attack you, people. I'm telling you right now, I got slapped on my back. I got hit in the head with a light fixture. Don't sit here and tell me that these spiritual beings cannot manifest in a physical way and look completely solid and interact with us and do things that a physical creature can. Because I'm getting to the point where I'm really starting to get aggravated with that. I mean, there's these researchers out there, these so-called researchers that are just determined to convince everyone that this is just some animal that's running around out there. And it's really, they say that the whole werewolf aspect of it makes us look silly. Well, I never say that they're a werewolf. I just said that's what they look like. I never said that they were changing shape and whatever. But to me, I'm to the point now to where the whole werewolf transformation thing sounds about as plausible as a physical dog man running around out in the woods that's always like that and whatever. And there are some people who have big shows, who agree with me. And, they may not come out and say it on the show, but they agree with me. And I'm telling you right now, there's a lot of researchers that pushing the whole Dogman as a physical being, whatever, and it's just always out there doing what it does as a physical being. First of all, we have no proof. We have zero proof of that, which makes me think that people are seeing this. People absolutely are seeing these things. They're seeing these creatures. They're seeing this Rake creature. But we have no physical proof of any of it. We have people who have scars on them from being attacked. We have vehicles that have been chewed on and attacked. We have farmhouses that have been chewed on and attacked. In fact, there's a ranch that Tony knows about that they had very physical proof of these things. But there are no proof that that's what did it. I mean, you can say, yeah, there's proof right there, physical proof that these things can manifest as physical. Do we have a specimen? No, we do not. Do we have anything, a tooth, anything that can say this is a physical being running around out there? Now, I do believe that there could be something to the whole dog-headed cynocephali. That is the only thing that makes me think that these things are a completely physical being, whatever, is that there could be a population that was here at one time. Maybe they're not even from here. I would venture to suggest that they are not from here, that they came here from another realm. Them, the Rake, whatever. They came from another realm and they're here in a physical form. Do I think that they evolved here as this? Heck no. Where are the skeletons for this? Where is the proof of this? I don't believe that.
Yeah, you don't go from like a 4-legged timber wolf into like a 2-legged animal without there being a middleman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there has to be something that shows like where it's mostly on 4 legs, but it can, go on its 2 legs quite a bit, and it's comfortable doing that. You don't just immediately evolve into this weird, hybrid creature where like you have elongated arms and legs that are very human-like, to where like you can grab with the arms and it can like swipe, and it has a lot of.
This doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't. It has a lot more mobility to attack. On 2 feet. You don't just get that immediately.
Mm-hmm. Well, this whole Rake thing. This thing moves around the same way. Its locomotion can be upright. It can be on all fours. I've wondered before, is it skinwalker? Is it what they call a wendigo? Is it something, a tulpa? Is it an alien? What if it's an alien? What if it was like, just as Dogman and Bigfoot could be not originally from here. They could be something that's from somewhere else too. I do believe that there is more plausibility to a Bigfoot being a completely physical creature. I have gotten enough reports of Bigfoot and Dogman interacting that I will say that they probably are physical at least part of the time, but they do things that are not physical. I mean, there was a girl that we had talked to for a while. We ended up not doing any of her stories or whatever because at that time it was like such a mixed bag. But now looking back on it, that was a decision me and Sal made, but Sal is no longer here. So, I'll probably revisit that. And it was such a mixed bag. Like she would talk about these things like they were completely physical, but then they would do completely non-physical things. And Tony, I think you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think.
And don't say the name.
Yeah, I don't know.
But you did do some research on that. You did the research.
Yeah, it was me and Sal that interviewed her. I think.
Yeah, and then we decided not to do it because Sal was like, "Well, I don't know," because it was such a mixed bag. So we as a team just kind of agreed, well, we're not going to pursue that because we wouldn't know how to. But now that we're doing, we're kind of just venturing into other types of territory. But these things are so, I don't know how to describe it, like
supernatural.
Supernatural is the only thing I can think of. Lon Strickler, thinks that these things are supernatural. Ken Gerhardt said the same thing. Because they don't, Vic on the interview that we did with him says he kind of vacillates back and forth. There are a lot of talk show hosts that believe that they are supernatural beings. The physical people, they get very angry, and then if you try to suggest it was a Nephilim or from another dimension, or if it wasn't, they get mad. But the bottom line is, and the proof is in the pudding. We don't have anything physical to say that the Rake exists, to say that Dogman exists. We have lots and lots and lots of people's encounters.
What I would like to say about the Rake is it's such a weird creature, and the fact that it's pure white, because you won't find that anywhere in nature. Like a pure white thing that's not near snow or a biome where it's white all around. Because, Dogman, Bigfoot, they're very dark browns, or they're blacks or grays. Things that can, camouflage in their environment.
Stand next to a tree and be hidden.
Exactly.
Yeah, and a lot of times these, like somebody tried to tell me that these Dogman will be like the color of the trees around them.
Yeah,
like
I'm sure.
Typical gray timber wolf looking, running ring around in the oaks. I don't know about this whole Rake thing. I know that I think that when these things take a translucent, appearance, when they're being looked at, that's a type of camouflage itself. Because the guys said that they could see through it, but that there was like this pink inside of it, which I can only guess was some sort of organs or something. I would say that if they have to be in this world, that they would have to be physical of some form or another, at least temporarily, for they could be seen.
Well, you can't, interact with anything unless you're physical. Like you can't harm us or you can't attack anything unless you're in a physical way. And you have some kind of physical attributes to you. I'm sure, whatever spiritual form they take is like, if we think about it like dimensions, and they're on just like a different dimension than us, to where we can still see them, but we can't interact with them, that they have to enter our dimension to be able to, interact with us, basically.
Well, one of the things I was thinking about, like I said, I had a friend who's now deceased. He died, back in 2011. Was one of my best friends, and he had told me a story back in the 90s, like the mid 90s, that when his friend up near Rochester, they were out hunting up in upstate New York, and the same thing. Oh no, I'm sorry. They were fishing. They were fishing out on a little like pond. It wasn't big enough to be called a lake, but it was a pond. They called it a lake, but he said it was more like a pond. Let's put it that way. And two of his friends were up there, and they were fishing, and they saw this white thing floating in the water that at first they thought was just like a really big parachute or like a trash bag, and that it just like floated up toward them, and it just came slowly floating toward them, and they're like, what is that? It looked like a floating piece of trash, like a white trash bag that somebody had or like an umbrella, And he said that as it got closer, they started noticing that it was kind of moving, like there was little movement underneath the water, and it had a form of locomotion. And then they said that as they stared at it, it became translucent. But in the middle, where the spine and all that would have been, like if it was an animal, that it was like pink, and it had like this pink looking not an exo, but a skeleton. It was like pink. You know what I mean? Like you could see the
vertebrae,
flesh and all that. It was like pink, yeah. And then where the bones should have been, they saw like a pinkish flesh over it. It was almost like a skeleton with like a membrane over it. It was very odd. And they said that they saw this head come up. Now here's the description of the head. I'll give it to you in detail. The head was bulbous at the top, and it was in the front of the creature. The eyes were like a skull, like how a human skull. They were just sunk in. You could see the eyes were kind of like sunk back in, and you could barely see them. It was almost like too dark.
Was it like hollow? Or
almost, but not quite. They could see the eyes, but they were back up in it. And they had like this, like what looked like a membrane over the eyes. They didn't see the mouth until it began to get into the shallows and start to come up out of the water. At this point, they were already starting to run away, like run backwards, And they said that as it started to emerge from the water, they could see a mouth. And this mouth, much like Ernest, who told us the story about the Rake, which we're going to get into a little bit, the ones that were killed by the Dogman.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, he told us a crazy story about that. This thing opened its mouth, and they said that it had just humongous needle-like teeth all the way around its mouth, and that the mouth wrapped around the lower part of the head. And this thing had like a tongue that was kind of flicking in and out, almost like a snake, but very weird. And then as they stared at it, it became white again, and then it was solid white. And it did very much look like a flying squirrel, kind of like the picture that was drawn for me on a napkin. It was the same thing. So years later, when my friends told me about that story, I just kind of I had been drinking a little bit. So I kind of thought about it. I kind of dismissed it. And then one day I was just driving along and it just popped into my head. I don't know why. And I thought that could be the same thing. So I went and I revisited my friend from the 90s. And I said, can you get a hold of your friend? I'm not going to say his name. Can you get a hold of your friend, so-and-so, and up in Buffalo and have him, get in touch with me. So I got this guy's story. And yeah, it was pretty similar pretty much to what my friend had told me. Except there was a couple details that were left out when my friend told me, because that's what happens when you get something from secondhand and the secondhand. He said that once this thing started to come up out of the water, that the eyes popped out and that they were black and that they came from the back of the head and to the front of the head. and that the tongue wasn't flicking like a snake. It was just kind of coming out and like moving around in the air, almost like it was independent of the rest of it. It was weird. The tongue was blue, according to what he said. He said he got a really good look at it, and they each had rifles. He had a 30-06 and a pistol, and when they leveled the rifles at it, it kind of stopped and then slank back into the water and then dove into the water. So that is weird. Now, here's the weird thing, or that's even weirder. There was a guy that I was friends with on Facebook. I finally had to unfriend him because he was just... he was a very negative person. He was a very nice guy, and I had been friends with him for a long time, and then we're friends on Facebook, whatever, and he was into weird stuff, whatever. He constantly poo-pooed the whole Dogman thing, but he claims he saw a rake, or what people call a rake. And I thought that was odd. Like, he doesn't believe in Dogman or werewolves or anything like that, but he believed in the rake because he saw it. Now, that's the thing. Seeing is believing, right?
Yep.
So he saw this thing, and he said that he was convinced that it was a real creature and I was like, why do you believe in it? He said, well, because I saw one. Here's the funny thing. He saw it literally 43 miles from where my former best friend's, his buddies saw it, theirs, in upstate New York. Same area. Guy went to school in Syracuse, and anyways, they went to some place for spring break. They all went to go to this, I don't know, like some sort of like cabins or whatever, and they decided there was like a big pond or whatever lake. Could have been the same place for all I know, but he was pretty adamant that it wasn't. But the way it sounded was almost like it was the same, like a small lake. It had cabins there or whatever. And I was like, you sure this isn't the same place? He's like, no, it's about 43 miles from there. Because he said he knew where this other place was. So that was weird, because with this description he gave was just, I mean, it was so weird. It was like the same thing. This thing was in the water. They were on a boat fishing. This thing came up. It was cold, because even though it's spring break, it don't mean nothing. You can call it spring, doesn't mean it is. It's still in the wintertime. And they were out there fishing, and it was cold. It wasn't freezing, but it was pretty cold. And they see this thing start floating up toward their boat. And then they said they saw it like what looked like it kind of folded up. Like when you close an umbrella, it just kind of went whoop and became really skinny, and it was translucent, and then it folded up, and it was pink. Just same description. I mean, that's why I thought, maybe that's the same body of water. So I questioned him about it. Kind of got aggravated when I asked him more than once, because he was like, no, it's a different place. And I'm like, that's so weird, because that's the same thing, So anyways, this thing kind of folded up, and its arms, if you want to call them that, were very thin and just very rail-like, came up, and then this bulbous head, the way he described it, was like a normal lower human head, then it goes into this bulbous part at the top. And the eyes, he didn't really get a good look at the eyes, because they started their boat and took off and got away from it. And so he didn't really see it come out of the water.
No, the head. You mean like a light bulb kind of bulbous?
That's the way he described it. Was like, I asked him about that. Now, and I asked him so many questions, like I said, he was kind of getting aggravated. Like, I didn't believe him. And I said, look, it's not that I don't believe you. It's just a very unusual thing.
Yeah, we have to be thorough.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you have
And this was
sure.
only like 5-6 years ago when he told me that. What all brought it together was when our friend, Ernest, as we call him, not his real name, but told us the story of the Dogman. And when he described that creature that had fought with those Dogmen, it made me really, really think that there had to be something to this. It just made me think, man, that, I told Sal, and I told you, Tony, and Anthony, y'all were all there, that after he'd left, that there was something very, very, very unsettling about that, because it was like the way he described it was pretty spot on to these other stories that I had gotten from people.
Yeah, what's crazy about this interview is that me, Sal, you, Anthony, we all went to dinner with this guy. We met him personally, and he told us this story like to all of us personally. So it was like crazy to see him just explain it and just look at us, all of us, and just like look us dead in the eye and just tell us it. Like, it was.
He didn't never use the word rake either.
No, that was something we said.
Yeah, he lived down on a ranch, which actually borders the Hernandez Ranch. It bordered it. It's like a piece of land that's close to there. And so he told us this story about this rake type creature with these dogman, whatever. That is where that happened, I believe. Was it that one, or was it near Houston?
No, I think that one was.
I think that one was near the Hernandez property.
Yeah, it was near the Hernandez.
Yeah, well, and we'll get into that too. I wanted to do an update on the Hernandez Ranch, but there is a story that I'm going to tell here and probably retell again. Now, this is another one. The one that Ernest told us was that these dogmen were on the property, and they had been running around on that property doing what they do. Not going to get into the whole dogman, what they were doing, whatever, because this isn't about that. I told that story on Vic's show. But this creature, one of the as they called the alpha, had killed one of these rake creatures and had dropped it in the tree line. And a couple of the guys, including himself, went out there and looked at it and saw it laying there. But then when they looked up, they saw these what was it, 2 or 3 dogmen in the tree line, not very far from them.
Yeah, it was like
and
3.
So, they didn't pull cameras out and start taking pictures. They just leveled their guns and slowly backed away.
Well, I remember them saying they can't. Remember, because like they recognize camera phones and they recognize stuff like that.
Yeah, well, they didn't. From what I remember him saying at that point, they didn't even try, because we asked him, why didn't you? And Sal, of course, asked that question, and he was like, "I'm not going to sit there and with these other 3 creatures bearing down on us. I'm not going to sit there and try to take pictures of this whatever." He said it looked very alien, like it didn't belong on this world, like it just looked very unnatural. Not that the dogmen look natural themselves, but they look more natural than that thing. And he just said it looked very unsettling. It was white, almost translucent in certain spots, had humongous teeth, same thing, black eyes. People have said, too, that these things come from the inner earth. I had somebody that claims that one of them crawled up out of a well. Now, if you go to my interviews with Vic Cundiff, I talked about that in episode 58, I believe, of a guy that worked for us who it was near a church, and there were dogmen that came up out of a well, which makes me wonder if these things don't all just live underground. They could be from the inner earth. I mean, I'm a believer in the inner earth. I think there's validity to the whole inner earth theory. I don't know.
It would make sense to me. The sunken in eyes, especially because
are black, they're solid black.
Sensitivity to light. If they could, sink back in and out, it would make sense that they would hide their eyes in brighter climates or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then, white skin, that would make sense for the white skin because it wouldn't really matter as much.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I have, like, I'm torn between the whole ultra-terrestrial, extraterrestrial, intraterrestrial. I don't doubt anything at this point with these weird cryptids and whatever. I don't know. Here's what I'll say. There was a story that I was given by someone who claimed that they moved into a property. This happened in Wisconsin. And they were familiar with dogmen. The lady's husband was from Michigan, and they knew what a dogman was. And they had heard the stories and things like that. She said that they never saw anything like that. They did hear weird howls and things in the night, whatever. But that one day, her 3 children were outside playing in the summertime. They had an old well that was cemented over at the top. They had one of those big cement things that had been put over it. It was an old farmhouse that was at one time would have been far out of town. Now it was like on the edge of town. Like there was a subdivision that was built not too far away. And there was this humongous cement slab over the top of the well. The kids heard banging on that cement slab. And as they were standing there watching, this slab gets knocked off of the top of the. It didn't fall off right away, but it got hit and it went off the top enough to where there was room for a hand, like a white, almost translucent hand, appeared and began to shove the stone over, and another hand popped up. And she said that her kids gave a very solid description of this thing. They were sitting there watching it, and they were really young, at the age where the little one thought it was like a real life cartoon. That's what she said. Now, kids, when they're little, they like my wife was talking about when she was little, she literally thought that she could cut her finger off and it would grow back. Because when you're a little kid, you think you can fall from a canyon because Wile E. Coyote does it.
Yeah, ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance, well, not it can be. It can also be very messed up if you if you're a child, and I know when I was a kid, there was all this debate about cartoons being too deceiving for kids. I know back in the 80s, they were like, cartoons are making kids do stuff. When you're really, really little, you don't really have a good grasp on reality. So they just sat there and they watched this thing. They weren't afraid at first. They became afraid because eventually it pushed this cement slab over, pulled itself up out of this well pretty quickly. It had a round head. This is what's weird. They said it had pink eyes. Now, I want to say that probably the membranous part was over the eyes, maybe because it came out in the sun.
Yeah. And maybe, it had to hide it or whatever.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because that's the part that was not the same. It wasn't, they didn't, it was like these like bugging out pink eyes, and it had a weird tongue. It had sharp teeth. It had like big teeth, and it crawled up out of this well, and it jumped out on all fours and then kind of shook itself like a dog. And then it flipped around flipped itself over and began to crawl, and it ran and crawled up a tree. The kids at first were like just kind of stunned, and then the oldest one, she panicked and grabbed the other kids. It was a little boy and a girl, and got them to go inside. The two younger ones, they're only a year apart. They were like 4 and like 5, and the older one, I think she said, was like 9. The older one was had already kind of run back to the house, and then saw that the other two were just sitting there staring at it and not moving. So she got the courage to run back and grab them and get them inside the house. They told the mom about it. Now, I did tell her, I said, it's a pretty fantastical story. I mean, like, are you sure? I mean, because like a 9-year-old and a 4 and a 5-year-old. Okay, come on.
Yeah, how much can they really remember?
Exactly. But she said that she had recently... her and her husband had gotten separated, and her brother had come to stay there. And I guess the dad wasn't really, he wasn't really welcome there at that time. And so her brother was there, and he's kind of a tough guy. So he stayed out in a little shed, which she called it a shack. But it was like a shed, the way she described it, that they had converted into like a 1-room little apartment for him or whatever. And the night they saw that, he slept in the house with them because they were scared. She really thinks that the older child kind of made the other two afraid, by her panic.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they didn't know any better, and they saw, their big sister getting scared. They were like, "Oh, what's going on?" Yeah,
so then they freak out.
That. It's like when a kid like falls over and she just sits up and looks at you. It's not until you go like, "Oh, are you okay?"
Yeah,
are you okay?
Panic,
that they start crying.
Then they start lying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, Leah did. I mean,
your little sister.
Yeah, my little sister.
I was about to say your little sister was the expert at that. Like you would bump into her and she'd throw herself into a wall, and then I remember her too.
I remember she was driving down, just real quick, she was on a little scooter rolling down the street, hits a rock, does like a front flip, lands on her back, sits up, nothing happens, just grabs on, gets on the scooter, starts going again. But then, I'll flick her on the ear, and she thinks I broke her skull or something.
Well, she was doing that to get you in trouble.
Yeah, this is overreaction.
She's older now. She's not as bad. When she was little, she was a brat.
Yeah.
But, I contributed to it too, spoiling her. You too. Yeah, I gave y'all everything for Christmas, so we all were to blame. But she's grown into she's a good kid. But anyways, this isn't about your anger and hatred toward her for being a better kid than you. This is about the rake. And so what happened was the guy said that he had to go outside to get something from the storage shed, aka his apartment. He was walking out there and he didn't think nothing of it, what had happened. He didn't know how the cement slab had been moved, from the well. He literally by himself, being a 265-pound man, could not pick that stone slab up and put it back on there. He was going to need help from their other brother who lived like in town. So he said the next day we're going to cover it up and whatever. He looked down into the well, didn't see anything. But when he was walking out to his little apartment or whatever, he heard something shaking in the trees. Like he literally, there were 2 trees that were kind of close together. He saw something like jump from one tree to the next. And he's like, did I just see that? So he shines the flashlight up there. He doesn't see anything. He flies it back to the other tree. Then he clearly, this thing jumped onto the roof of his shack. He shines the light onto the roof of the shack as it's crawling on all fours over the top of the roof and going down the other side. He got a pretty good look at it. Even though it was dark, he had a very powerful flashlight. He said that it was about 600 lumens, which is decent. And he asked me if I knew about that. And I said, well, I run security, so I know what that is.
Yeah, we know all about
We all
the
know
lumens.
about the lumens. And I was like, okay, so you saw it pretty good. Because I did ask him. I said, yeah, flashlight, you know. And I wasn't trying to be a jerk and debunk the story or poke holes in it, but it is a kind of a, you know.
It's your job. You know,
It is my job to do that. And so people, when we talk, and a lot of you have talked to me, I'm not trying to be dismissive. I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything like that. I just got to know that when I put a story out there, that I don't have somebody come back later on and be like, that's not what was said, or they trolled me and then they just use it as a way to make me look stupid for believing it or whatever.
Yeah, and it's also important to know the details. That's one of the main things that makes you such a good storyteller, I think, is because you ask for the details and you're very specific on the details. Like you care a lot about that.
Mm-hmm. And Tony, you you're privy, as I was corrected by someone the other day in the comments. You're privy to a lot, like the emails, and you get a lot of the stories. I'll go over them with you. Even when Sal was the host, you were privy to a lot of it because you helped us put the show together. And so you know that we get a lot of crazy stories. Well, this guy saw it, and what he saw very much matched the description of what the children saw. The way it crawled, it looked like it just had 4 legs, but the legs ended in hands. That's what he said.
Like 4 standing legs or 4
like
legs?
4 legs, like it was crawling on 4 legs.
No, I'm saying like 4, like 2-legged, and they just had 4 of them?
But the legs look like, the bottoms of them look like hands, kind of like. He said that they looked like it had like these, almost like a spider appendages at the bottom of the hands. And that the backward, the legs were the hawk type, like a dog's like legs, the back legs. Did not get a good look at the head, and it crawled down the other side of his shed. He stayed in the house for a few days.
Yeah, I would too.
Then he said that he eventually got the nerve to go back out because he's a brave guy, he's a tough guy, and so he decided to go back out there and stay. Now, her husband eventually came by unannounced, wasn't supposed to. Had very specific days he was supposed to see the children and things like that. He dropped by unannounced, and he was out in the driveway, and then all of a sudden he just pulls out and peels out and drives out as she starts to come outside, which was weird. And the next day, she tried calling him. He didn't answer. The next day, he calls her while she's driving, whatever, and she's like, what do you want? And he's like, look, I'm going to tell you something. You got to leave that place. I saw some sort of demon. Okay. She's like, he told her, he's like, I saw it crawling down into the well. I saw this thing run across the yard, stand up on 2 legs, spin its body around, and then go down into the well. He's like, I don't want my kids there. He's like, I had to process what I saw. And he did tell her, he admitted, he's like, I had been drinking and I'm sorry for dropping by unannounced. He goes, I just wanted to see the kids. I miss you. I miss the kids, blah, blah, blah. He did have a problem with that, with drinking. So, but here's the messed up thing. Like, even if he was a drunk and even if he was drinking, he did not know anything about what his children had seen a few days prior to that.
He didn't know what the brother saw?
He didn't know what his brother-in-law had seen because they didn't tell him. So you got this whole weird dynamic going on with the family and all that. He and the other brother and the brother that lived on the property, it took all 3 of them to put that cement slab back on that well.
Point. It can just lift it by itself.
Yeah.
Again, so.
Well, they also decided to put like a metal, ring or whatever around it. I don't know. They sealed it off, he said. They welded it like a metal ring, they welded it together to keep it, on there. And, after that, nothing else happened. The kids were told to stay far away from it. They did claim that a couple times they saw the cement move a little bit, like it was trying to come back out.
Yeah. And, I'm sorry, I was going to let you go ahead and finish.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, like, maybe it's not, if it isn't like an underground creature to where like it just lives underground, but maybe it is very sensitive to light, so that like that's just its hidey hole, and like it found that, and it just lives in there. But like, and then they just trapped it in there.
Well, I asked this question, and I bring it all together for you folks. I asked her, the mom, when did you guys move into that place, as opposed to like when this thing came out of the well? Because this thing may have been going in and out of that well for a while, and the people like the realtors or whoever might have been going over there to sell the place and then saw that the cap was off, got some people to put it back on there, and then it kept coming off, whatever. So that's the question you had to ask. Or was it just like it found a passage and it went up into it and decided to come up into that abandoned well and open the, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, what if,
very important question.
Is it like it found that as a hiding spot, or is it that?
Was it recent, or had it been always doing it?
Yeah.
That was the question I wanted answered. And so she told me that they had only been staying there for about 2 weeks when that happened. So if it was traveling in and out of that thing, it probably would have gone in there more before 2 weeks. But then again, we don't know the habits of these creatures. Maybe they just come out to feed every month, once a month, or every 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, based on its size, it doesn't look like it needs a lot of nutrients. I mean, they seem very skinny, very emancipated. I mean, very strong, emaciated, not
emancipated too.
Emancipated proclamation. They're free now.
You're free. Go and kill and eat. These things go in and out of water. Very similar descriptions, folks. I mean, I get like very similar descriptions. I have gotten a few descriptions of these things with like horns, which makes, but I kind of put that in the Wendigo category, and I'm gonna save that for another show because those sound very much like a Wendigo to me. I have been getting stories for 30 years, and I can tell you right now, it's ramped up a lot since I've gotten the show, and I've been on Dogman Encounters, and since I was on BDRP, I was on Venomous Fringe. Every time I go and do a show anywhere, I get more encounter because I let people know, hey, send me your crazy stories. I'm not a one-trick pony. I'm not just here to do Dogman, okay? There's a lot of ghost material. Folks at home listening, if you have friends that have ghosts, that like ghosts, send them my way. Send them to my show because that's a very vast audience. And one thing, the Dogman audience, not knocking you, man, believe me, I love the Dogman people. But it's a very small fringe of the paranormal.
Yeah, it's like a niche.
It's a niche, yeah. A niche, whatever. But the ghost groups, they have like 160, 180,000 members, 200,000, whereas the Dogman groups are lucky to get a few thousand. And so, you get, I think like Dogman Believers is probably one of the biggest ones. It's got like 6,000 people. Dogman Believers only. So you got like these humongous, this audience. And so somebody was saying the other day, well, if you believe that Dogman are a spiritual being, then you're crazy. You've never seen one. I don't believe that, because most of the people who are into the paranormal of like the spirits and all that, they're going to be more open to the idea that this thing could be a spiritual creature than a living flesh and blood creature that we just cannot absolutely pin down and have any proof of whatsoever.
I mean, you said it earlier, is like, where's the biology? Where's the the proof biology wise?
Mm-hmm. And even less so for Rake. I mean, the sightings of Rakes have increased recently, which makes me think that there's something to it. The stories are always very similar, But if you think about it, though, Rakes are often seen in the same territory as a Dogman. I had somebody that sent me a big old long dissertation on it the other day. And I did read it, even though I don't always have time to just read big old long letters, whatever. This person was very adamant, and it caught my attention. What he said was, or actually, what she said was she believed that these things are Dogmen.
Really?
Yeah. She claims that these things are a type of skinwalker, that's in its base form. Okay, and that they can morph from that into a Dogman. And when the Dogmen fight with these Rakes, it's intertribal, it's metaphysical warfare, but it's like skinwalkers fighting other skinwalkers.
The
Dogmen try to catch them in that form, is what she claims. She also claims to be a former, she's former military, but she's also a Native American. I don't want to give too many whatever about her identity. But yeah, and she told me that, and she's like, people don't get it. They don't know that these are the same thing, and that it is black magic. Here's why I would say this. If it was just one person that told me that, I would think that's okay, whatever. But as you know, Tony, I have 2 or 3 friends that are Native American. Chief's part, Scorpion's part. No, I'm talking like I got a couple friends. My friend's ex-wife was she's half. I had a couple of them tell me point blank that people have no idea, like they just have no clue what is really going on, and that these things they're all basically a shape-shifting type. And this is what this person told me, and he was a Ute Indian. Told me that the Navajo are big into that. They're their big enemies, whatever, and that they are big into the shape-shifting and the black magic, and that they use this magic to shapeshift, and that when they're in an intermediate state, it's almost like they look like a piece of clay, and that it can become whatever they want it to be: a deer, an elk, an owl, a wolf, a coyote. And that sometimes when they get caught in mid-transformation, they just move around like that, because it takes less energy to do that than to go the full transformation, and that they can do whatever they do. And that's for another show we're going to get into eventually, about skinwalkers and about.
I have a theory. I don't know. It's just me thinking about in my head. But I remember when you were talking about the Hernandez Ranch. I don't remember if it was the Hernandez Ranch or another ranch, but it's the one where I don't want to say the name in case it's his actual name, but they caught Stripes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Stripes.
You remember how he said that Stripes was like losing hair, and it was very like it was like starting to become like very weird looking.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because it's too far away from his pack. So what if these rakes that we're seeing are actually like exiled dogmen, and that when they become too far away from their pack, they just start devolving into like this weird creature?
Well, I mean, okay, then what? Okay, so by that logic, these things could be a dogman that went underground, kind of like the Time Machine with what is it, H.G. Wells? Isn't it H.G. Wells? And he goes way into the future, and the creatures that lived under the ground became like blue looking almost. They were so translucent they became blue looking, and that they started using the humans above the ground as food.
Yeah, I mean, whatever.
Because they became like a completely different species, and they looked malformed and weird.
Yeah.
That's the only way that would be plausible, because you don't really hear about these things having a pronounced snout. Like it would be a dogman would have a snout.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only reason I didn't think of that. It was like, I don't really think it'd be a dogman if it has like a jaw like that.
I think what she was trying to say was that these things, that is their base form
for a shapeshifter.
Yeah, for a shapeshifter. I
understand that.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, like, if you take a dog's snout and then you move it back, the jawline would still go all the way back to the back of the head. If you took, like, a dog's mouth and just put it on a person and you remove the snout, that's a long line. So that would make sense to where, like, why its head is so weird looking like that.
Mm-hmm.
But this is obviously just a theory that
we're speculating, folks.
Yeah.
We're not.
So, I mean, there's none to proof of that.
Although I am an expert on this completely.
We're both experts.
We're all experts. You at home are experts. Everyone's an expert. Everyone's a researcher.
Just
everyone's
an
expert.
You say that as an expert, because like we said, that's the only real proof that you are one.
That's the disclaimer.
You also have to have one other person say that you are an expert. So I say that Wolf is an expert, and he calls me an expert. So we've been through the trials.
Yeah. But you got to have a disclaimer though, in case somebody catches you, off guard. Just be like, as an expert, I hold the right to change my expert status.
Exactly. And you also hold the right to, withhold the correct information. You don't have to tell everyone.
Exactly. The world's not ready for it.
So if you're not wrong, you just, withheld that information.
Yeah. Okay. So folks, man, I got some more Rake stories too, man. We've already hit the hour mark, and I'd like to come and do some more, talk some more. I got a couple pretty crazy ones that we didn't even get to touch on, but this is episode, I guess it's going to be about the Rake, I guess, and the Dogman Rake connection, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. So, Folks, that's all the time we have for today. DasWolfman88@gmail.com. DasWolfman88@gmail.com. Me and Mushu over here laying it down for you. Like we said, we're experts, folks. The only real experts in all of the fields of cryptozoology, paranormal, parapsychology, anything that's weird and unusual, UFOs, Bigfoot. You have us right now telling you that we are the only true experts.
And before people start saying that we're self-proclaimed expert, I just disprove that by saying that I proclaim Wolf as an expert.
Yes, and I proclaim
exactly.
Mushu as an expert.
It's not self.
We're endorsing one another as experts.
Exactly. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. Thank you for listening. And if you have a nice comment, you want to say something, if you have your own new theories about it, just go ahead and comment in the comment section.
Yeah, like and subscribe and comment on YouTube, whatever, or any of the other platforms that we're on, if you want to comment on it or whatever. But if you're going to have something negative to say, then, screw off. We don't want to hear it.
Actually, you do. We don't mind. Go ahead. We'll see what you got.
We'll just delete it.
We'll just delete it, but
we'll read it. We'll read it. And
yeah,
then
it might give us a nice chuckle. Who knows?
Make fun of you. We'll just let our attack dogs go after. We have rabid fans.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
we'll let you go, guys. We love our fans. We hope that you all go out and get you a nice PRT shirt. I know the weather's going to be warming up, so maybe not a hoodie, but hey, get a hoodie for next winter. Who knows?
Or get a mug or a phone case.
Get a mug or a phone case, whatever, but get something with a sticker. Help us promote the show. Anything you can do to help helps us. And good night. Oh, wait. Hold on. I forgot to say it. From whatever spaceship you're being abducted by, whatever Bigfoot is chasing you, whatever ghost is rattling change in your attic,
whatever well you're climbing out of,
whatever creatures climb out of a well to chase you right now, have a good night and good luck with all that.